Everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Fullfunnel Live. Again, two co-hosts, Sandra and Vlad, are here today, despite all the madness that we have experienced in Valencian region. As promised, we're going to discuss today how to adapt your marketing function to the new reality and how to make sure that this function actually produces the results, pipeline, revenue in 2025. The reason why we discussed it, so last week I posted this basically post about this topic, and there were quite a lot of questions. And basically one of the most popular questions was, okay, we see in marketing, we experience reduced in our course, basically having less people, but now we need to, with this smaller team, we need to produce the results. And for many teams, there is a huge shift. The teams, marketing teams, are in charge of revenue generation right now. And maybe for some organizations, that's absolutely fine. This is how the teams used to work forever. But for many teams where marketing wasn't revenue responsible and where marketing doesn't have actually access to the client database, but there is no collaboration between marketing and sales, that could be very challenging. And this is what we are going to talk about today. So we prepared that diagram, and I feel that would be helpful if we'll just start with just quickly reviewing that diagram and explaining the way how we look at developing marketing functions step by step. So I will share my screen, and I will try to zoom in so we can work on the same document together. So here is that post, and if you guys would like to get the high quality image, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will send you that image in PDF. I will try also to zoom in so you can see it. The key idea of how we think about building marketing function for 2025, right? Especially also if you have limited team and resources. You start focusing. That's the key. And basically, we'll discuss in the next minutes how to define that focus. But you start focusing on certain markets, on certain verticals, or on certain clusters where you know you are likely to succeed, right? And this cluster should be aligned with your strategic goals and needs and challenges. For the initial planning, whenever you'll be thinking about, okay, we need just to start thinking about marketing in 2025, you need to involve your stakeholders, senior sales leadership, and just all together with them define these priorities. Next, when you'll focus on specific verticals, forget about your product ICP. We often hear that we have defined our ICP and we want to work on it. No, for every new market, for every new goal, for every priority that you're going to focus on, you'll need to redefine your ICP. In some cases, it could be the same ICP, but in many cases, it would be different, right? Then when you define this ICP, you define your core customers in that segment, and you do the customer research. You define the way how they buy, what triggers their buying process, etc. And then visually, you try to map out obviously, what you see here is a linear buyer journey, but in reality, we all know that it's never linear, right? So you try to map out the key stages, and then how you can, with your existing resources, how can you impact it? In a nutshell, this is what we want to discuss today. But the first point, obviously, what I have mentioned, focus, defining the go-to-market strategy, the key priorities and challenges. Maybe, Vlad, you can pick up that part.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. And when it comes to the initial alignment that you need to do, so that basically you are creating a marketing function and the programs that are aligned with what your boss or your, let's say, the executive team actually wants. We have to start obviously with the goals that the business have. And let me just give you a very quick example to see. I mean, you've probably heard this so many times, goals and stuff, and it may sound a bit theoretical or abstract, but it's actually very, very concrete. So let's say your goal is to, I don't know, for example, you have the next founding round in 12 months and you need to prove, let's say, that you're able to generate and close net new revenue, because this was a problem in the last during the last year. Pipeline and revenue was a problem for a lot of companies, and some of the investors are getting nervous around it, especially when they look at the cost of acquisition. So they may be saying, you know what, you have been kind of growing at all cost. We don't have the money is more expensive these days. We expect you to have more efficient growth. Can you show us that you can acquire customers, new customers, at a reasonable cost of acquisition? You have 12 months until we release the next round or whatever. Okay, so this will immediately impact all the other choices that you will make. One of the next choices, for example, that you will have to make is, okay, where do I want to focus on? Do I want to focus on which markets and segments do I want to focus on? Do I want to focus on, net new revenue, expansion revenue, et cetera, et cetera? Well, again, it's all in the function of that goal. If I want to focus, for example, on, in this case, if I have this goal that I need to show that I can acquire new customers at a reasonable cost of acquisition, and maybe there is also some other condition, like they have to be, like, let's say, at least 50K a year customers or something like that. Well, now I have a very precise set of criteria that I can use to decide on, okay, maybe if I look at the past, I see that we were winning enterprise deals with very nice average contract value, annual contract value, but it took us like 300 days was, let's say, the average sales cycle. Well, if 300 days is the average sales cycle and you only have 12 months to show the results, well, then this is probably not a good strategy to focus on that segment. So again, you really want to understand what are the goals, and not when executives say, I want to have 30% growth, 50% growth, or whatever this year, and they start basically sharing some wishes, wishful thinking, but basically really try to understand what is driving them, what is really at top of their agenda, and work down from there. So this is like the goals, right? And then based on that, look at the revenue metrics, sales velocity, to understand where you need to focus on. You will use these metrics to understand, like I said, for example, do we want to go after the kind of segments that close faster because we don't have a lot of time? Do we want to go, maybe we are launching a new program and we want to show traction more quickly. Again, maybe we should focus on the middle segment, on the, let's say, mid-market segment instead of the enterprise segment. Or on the contrary, we see that we have last year won a lot of new clients. Our goal is simply to grow our revenue by X. We have seen that we have closed a number of really good enterprise clients, but we only have one, let's say, small project there or small implementation. We can have so much more. Well, maybe then the focus, one of the main focuses should be expansion of those specific clients, okay? Then you decide, based on that, you decide what are the focus markets and segments that we want, market segments and account clusters, I'll explain in a moment, where we want to focus on. So again, you look at historical revenue, where did we have good revenue metrics per segment, per cluster, and cluster is basically a group of accounts that have similar challenges, that have a similar use case. So you don't break it by industry, but you break it by the main reason that they buy from you, the kind of job to be done that they have. And then you just compare these different segments and you decide, okay, it actually makes sense to prioritize, let's say, consumer goods companies that have went through a recent acquisition. Maybe this is like a use case where you can make a big difference. Or I don't know, if you're selling an HR software, let's say high-tech companies that are hiring software developers remotely, and you know that you can really have a competitive advantage for that use case, and you see historically that you have good deal size, reasonable sales cycles, etc., etc. And then once you have aligned with your executives, okay, these are the goals, these are the target segments that we want to focus on, then you need to go after the ICP. So understanding, looking at those accounts, those won deals from that segment that you want to focus on, and then starting to understand, okay, what do they have in common in terms of firmographics, technographics? How does the buying committee look like? Are there any other characteristics that make one account a better fit? Or maybe there are some red flags or things that we need to pay attention to. These are the things that you can figure out by studying, on the one hand, won deals to identify when an account is a good fit, and lost deals, for example, looking at the largest lost deals to understand what are potentially the red flags, and use that as criteria to prioritize, to select, qualify, and prioritize your account. You definitely also want to look at, once you have this clarity on the ICP and the reason they buy, on the target segments and on the target use cases, you want to make sure that you have the messaging and content that is aligned with that ICP. So you may need to revise, okay, is our current messaging aligned with that? Do we have, maybe are we missing some specific assets for these specific verticals, for these specific segments? And also, very importantly, these days, a lot of companies we know are struggling to generate awareness with the target accounts, and maybe in whatever market. And one of the biggest mistakes that I make is kind of like focusing their messaging and their content on product marketing. Product marketing is super important, but at the same time, to create an awareness, product marketing usually is very relevant for those accounts that are in the market right now. But as we know that the majority of accounts are not in the market, you also need to have some content and messaging related to the strategic challenges that may be bigger than your product. So I was mentioning example of HR. Maybe you have a product that helps you, I don't know, like process a lot of CVs super fast or something like that. But this is like one of the jobs to be done of your target accounts, of the HR people that you're targeting. That's not like top of mind challenge that they have. That's like the first order challenge that they're thinking about. Maybe again, you have a competitive advantage for those like remote hiring. They're hiring software developers, and you know that this is like a scarce profession. So these are the kind of, so we can start thinking about what are the challenges, like the big business challenges, the big challenges that they have when they're trying to do their job, where your solution is like one part of that. So also making sure that you have content, or at least plan to develop then content and messaging around those strategic challenges as they relate to your target segments that you have selected, target use cases, and the target account. So with that, you will have the foundations of your GTM strategy, of the go-to-market strategy, with those elements being aligned with the key stakeholders, and also being aligning your programs and later on programs, but also the content and messaging with the ICP that you will be focusing on.
And I would love to emphasize once more time on the importance of the first quadrant that you can see here, the awareness that Vlad mentioned. Almost everybody does demand capturing, in a sense as we know it, right? Focusing on targeted keywords, doing search engine optimization, creating also SEO optimized blog posts, right? So that content, just to capture that demand. But in 2023 and in 2024, we had a lot of conversations. And by a lot, I mean definitely more than 100 conversations with senior sales leaders of not only of all of our clients, because I mean, we're also a normal company, we don't close every deal successfully. So we also don't have 100% close one rate. But where I'm heading with this, right? Having all of these conversations, like we always talk about their go-to-market challenges, we always postpone ABM demand gen conversations to the end. So we want to understand what triggers them, so they start coming to us. And one of the main challenges everybody mentioned, like literally everybody, lack of visibility and awareness among target accounts, right? And this is the key. So a lot of companies simply don't do it, or do it absolutely wrong way, in absolutely wrong way. So just running ads saying, hey, look how wonderful, what Vlad actually mentioned, right? Just sharing, for example, a snippet from your product and saying, hey, look how fantastic our product is. Or just, sharing generic blog post that that doesn't really deliver value, right? It's not something that helps you to create awareness among target accounts. And the problem nowadays that we are competing, first of all, for the attention of our target buyers. Just think for a second. You want to sell to tech companies. You want to sell to HR role, right? And then you're not, because a lot of companies think we are just competing with our direct competitors. No, you're just competing with all people with all vendors who are selling to this role, right? Consultant companies, agencies, other technology companies that potentially could be used by HRs. And literally everybody running more or less the same tactics, right? So the key point here, how can we, first of all, how can we attract attention? How can we grab attention of these people, right? And then how can we ensure that these strategic buyers would associate our product with their strategic challenges, right? It's just one thing to be known. I know there are guys from Fullfunnel, I know they post something about marketing on LinkedIn. And completely different, I know there are guys from Fullfunnel who talk about account-based marketing and demand generation, and who know how to help us to achieve marketing and sales alignment and drive enterprise sales opportunities, right? This is what brand awareness stands for. So where I'm heading with this, considering everything what Vlad shared with you, when you define all together your priorities, you define your ideal customer profile, the next step is running customer research. Because the second question that we actually hear often from marketing and sales, what activities should we do? Should we try LinkedIn? Should we try the podcast or whatever? And what channels should we use? There is the answer is simple. There is no silver bullet. You must run customer research. And here's how we do it. So we usually, whenever you define a specific cluster or vertical, depending on your preferences in targeting, right? We always analyze our highest ACV deal, annual contract value, or average contract value, depending on your business model, and our fastest deals. So the deals that were closed really fast, where you have the shortest sales cycle lengths, right? Then we always try, because sometimes it's not realistically possible, but if it's possible, try to get phone interviews with the key, let's say, buying committee members, with the decision makers, with the champions, people who were chatting with you and who brought you to the organization, and with power users. If it's not possible, right, then just do the research with champions. Because if you are selling to mid-market and to enterprise, in most cases, you will be dealing with internal champions, and you need to get their buy-in first, and you need to understand why they become, what happens in their business. So the solutions like yours become their top priority, right? And how they typically sell your products in-house. So I would like to emphasize one more time, I don't recommend just to send generic surveys, right? Or incentivize people, hey, if you'll answer to this email, or if you'll fill in that survey, I will give you a $20 Starbucks gift card or Amazon gift card. It doesn't really work that way. You need to have in-depth interview. Obviously, the time that you can get from these clients depends on your level of relationship with them. But anyhow, we always recommend to focus on 5 groups of questions that become foundation for your marketing function. So when it comes to these questions, the first group of questions that we love to ask and we always highly recommend to ask is the buying triggers. If you are able just to ask only one question, right? That question should be, what has happened in your business that led you to start looking for solutions like ours? And try to, this is the point where when you need to try to dig deeper to understand, right? For example, if they say, in our case, we missed revenue targets, just don't be satisfied with that answer. Just ask the context, why, right? And then you can hear a lot of insights. Next, the second question is all about their research process. How do they usually evaluate vendors? How they are looking for the solutions? And quite often they could mention, for example, I belong to a community, like our community Trenches, and I would just come to that community and ask a question. Or I have peers who I trust, and then I can reach out and ask for the recommendation. They could mention, I'm learning about new solutions from LinkedIn. I'm following ABC, and whenever they recommend a certain solution, I just bookmark it, and whenever the need comes, I might, find it. Sometimes they mention, I will just, open Google and start my own research and evaluation. And the second question that you need to ask, what is important for you? What kind of information are you looking for? What can influence your decision to start talking to a certain vendor, right? This is the key to understand. And this is how, by the way, you define the channels that you can leverage for awareness, right? This not only awareness, but also the channels where you need to be presented to be able to be discovered by your strategic buyers, right? Next, the third question is all about their decision-making process. So they have a set of different solutions. So how do they make the decision? What influences their decision, right? What criteria basically are important for them? Next step is also understanding who is involved, because again, one thing that is absolutely true for mid-market and enterprise opportunities, the deals are not closed by your sales reps. The deals are closed when the team has an internal discussion about specific vendors, right? So you need to understand with whom your champions are talking to, what questions are usually discussed, and how the prioritization happens internally, right? That helps you to understand the buying committee structure and what are the typical questions these people ask. And this is step by step. We are going from awareness stage to bottom of the funnel to actually where the deal is happening, right? Basically, there are 2 more groups of questions that we like to ask. One of them is the product value, because what Vlad mentioned, right? Just to be very precise with your messaging, with your value proposition, you need to understand what actual value your product delivers, right? Quite often we ask questions, so can you describe your jobs to be done, or the processes and the challenges that you were facing before using our product, and how it has changed now, right? How would you summarize that value? So you always, if they share something intangible, try to ask, did you try to measure the value, right, in hours, in money, whatever. So this is the way how you can update your messaging. This would be your kind of core value proposition points. But also it's important for you to understand their jobs to be done and these challenges and their KPIs, right? Why this value is important for them. And when you understand their jobs to be done for you, it would be way easier to come back to the awareness stage and think about what content, aside just talking about my product, right? What content can I create that is aligned with the jobs to be done of my target buyer persona, with their needs, with their daily challenges, right? Then that content can be helpful, could be valuable for them, and could attract their attention. This is actually how awareness been created, right? Because the truth is that most of your market is not actively buying. Most of your market, even if, for example, if you think about different platforms like LinkedIn or Slack communities, right, or Reddit, people are not coming to buy there, right? People come, they have only one level of demand for content, right? They want to get fresh information. They want to see new recommendations. They want to find something that could be, aside from entertainment, of course, aside from entertainment, right? They want to find something that will help them with their daily job. So that would be the category number 4. And the last one, it's exactly about this educational process. This could be a very straightforward question that you can ask. What platforms and communities do you use to learn, right? If they say, for example, LinkedIn, are there any specific people that you follow and why, from whom you, for example, you gain professional information, right? If they say communities, you can ask for the names of these communities, right? So this way you can gain the understanding of who should be your target, let's say, co-partners, and the channels that you can use to create your marketing function. One of the most important things also to address when it comes to planning the activities, but that would be the next part, right? You don't need to come up with like 50 different programs to run. Always start gradual and just figure out what are 1-2 programs for each of the buyer journey stages that we can do, but can do really well, instead of running 50 different programs in parallel and doing them in a wrong way, not being committed, not excelling at them. So that would be the key. When you finish that customer research, you will have more or less a good outline of this linear buyer journey. Obviously, again, just to emphasize one more time on this, the buyer journey is not linear, right? There could be multiple steps that your buyers repeat, and we have a very good guide in our blog where Vlad interviewed one of our clients, and they describe the entire buyer journey with all the touch points. So if you would be interested, we can share that guide with you as well. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't visualize your buyer journey. You should, just to understand these different touch points, and then you start mapping out these different activities, what we can do to influence each of these touch points, which leads us basically to the next part, the buyer journey itself.
All right, so now you have collected the information from the customers themselves. It also makes sense to have a look at any history that you might have, any digital information that you might have about them. For example, if you have like a Gong or another platform that you use for sales intelligence, for conversation intelligence, I guess they call it, where you have some insights from the sales calls. Taking those into account can really help you. I would probably do that before reaching out to customers, and then asking the questions that are that were missed, maybe in the CRM notes or in the call recordings or summaries. Then also looking at the analytics and figuring out what are the touch points that we see these customers use to come to the to become an opportunity. Then also looking at the CRM to understand at which point did we start to have conversation with other people. So basically what I'm saying is to complement the information that you have in your digital analytics in your CRM, maybe call recordings with these interviews. And now you can start basically going through the different notes that you have, the different pieces of information, and mapping out a buyer journey similar to the one that you see here shared on the screen. Basically, what you're asking yourself is, first, you're asking what were the different steps that they took starting before they purchased the product. So what were the, like Andre explained, the buying triggers, what was happening in the business before, and what did they do to try to understand what's happening? How did they try to, you know, understand their problem and start searching for a solution? Who did they ask? Very frequently they will, you know, start having discussions either with their peers, maybe in the communities, etc. So you want to map out these steps based on all the information that you collected. For each step, I would also advise you to note down, based on all these notes, what is the information that they were trying to, what were the questions that they are asking themselves, information that they're trying to find out for each of these steps, and potentially also if they had any concerns or doubts, usually in the later steps of the buyer journey, you want to add those. And as well, to really understand at which step did you have other people joining the buyer journey, because you're not selling to companies, you're selling to people. We know that in B2B, you will have large buying committees and different buyers. So usually you will have most touch points and most conversation, the longer conversation with somebody who is your internal champion, who is actually selling your solution. You're not really, as Andre said, and not really selling the solution, but your champion, internal champion, is the one who is selling that. And but you will at a certain point, and these are the things, for example, that you will never be able to see in your CRM. These are the things that you will never be able to see in your digital analytics. Is, for example, okay, at which point did our champions start having conversation? Who did they have conversations with, et cetera, et cetera. So you basically start mapping the steps. For each step, what is the information that they asked, potentially questions, objections, doubts, who else was involved at this step, maybe at the beginning, not so many people, later, you know, different kinds of people, at the end, maybe procurement, etc. And now that we have that, we can actually start planning our programs based on the buyer journey. So if you remember at the beginning, we said we want to align on what are actually our goals, what are the metrics that we are going to use to measure success of marketing in our programs, ICP, etc. Now we can also align on the buyer journey, because as you will see in a moment, and you can see already on the screen, you see here a little yellow rectangle with the roles, different roles that, you know, in the last step we are going to map here. So there are different people who in your team and different roles that can have activities that you might allocate or assign to those roles and those people to influence different parts of the buyer journey. Okay, so again, we map it out, and now we have the information that we need to basically start creating a program that is aligned with this buyer journey, which is the next step.
So one of the things that I would like to share next is an answer to a question. Let me stop sharing my screen, and I will just pick up community questions and then navigate to one slide that I wanted to share. It was a question from Peggy. How can you influence many different buyers when you have such a small marketing team and not enough relevant content? I feel this is one of the most important things that you as a marketing team need to do, right? Let me share my screen back, and I will show you step by step a couple of slides that we have prepared for it. So first of all, as we mentioned, right, you always need to do this cluster decomposition. When you finish your customer research, right, it would be good to collect the notes from these calls with accounts, and also maybe involve your subject matter expert and go through the what we call cluster decomposition. Here's the challenge. Let's say the missed revenue targets because of silent marketing and sales and long sales cycles, right? Let's say this is the challenge of all of our target accounts. And then what is really, really important? If you have and you can't focus on multiple buyers, you need to define the core role that you'd like to focus on. Let's say the champions, right? Who are our champions? Let's say VPs of marketing. Okay. Then what you are going to do next, you are going to talk with, to discuss with your team the basically the challenge decomposition. What are the jobs to be done related to our product? And it could be driving, like running marketing programs to drive pipeline, getting consensus with sales, developing marketing strategy, etc., etc. What are their KPIs? Next, what market trends related to our product do they currently look at? What challenges do they face? What are the root reasons? And when you do this challenge decomposition, you can come up with multiple ideas for your content. Suddenly your content becomes relevant, right? Because it's purely aligned with your target buyer persona. It's not only product based. Hey, buy my product because it's awesome and we have all of these features that can help you with this and that. But here's the problem, right? If they don't know you, they are likely to ignore your message. And second, even if they know you, right? But there is no logical bridge between their priorities and their challenges and your product for them. For you, that you can obviously create that logical bridge. You can say, hey, we know that our product is very helpful and can help you with this and that. But if your buyers don't create that logical bridge for themselves, you will not be able to sell to them. So when you do this decomposition together, you'll come up with multiple ideas, and then coming back to the previous step of customer research, you start mapping out these ideas. This should be our blog post. This should be our webinar topic or field event. Or this could be a private group discussion with one of our customers where they will present, maybe in format of mini webinar / panel discussion where they will present their challenges and how they solve them, maybe optionally just sharing their experience with your product. So this is one of the things. And the second thing, because it might not purely solve your issue, like you said, we have multiple buyers and we still need to engage with them. The only way to do it is just do the multi-threaded engagement. So here is an example. I just picked up it from, it's the real example. I only blurred the confidential details, but here's an idea, right? You define the core roles, and then who is going to engage with whom. So if potentially you can involve multiple people, you define, okay, so here is our marketing team is going to focus on this buyer personas, right, on these buying committee members. And then you have these different buying committee roles. Then let's say sales, they would be focusing on those roles. And whoever else, let's say if you have the third group that could be involved, let's say subject matter expert, if you are selling to the technical audience, this could be your solution architects, right? So they would be focusing on that third role of maybe power users, right, for example. So this is the only way to solve your product. But for marketing team, if you have limited resources, it's not essential, it's vital to narrow down your focus, define the key areas that you want to focus on, and then the key buyer persona. What's the role? Is it a champion? Is it the decision maker? Is it an influencer? Is it the power user? So that would be the only way to handle it, right? And optionally, if that would be dependent on your relationship with sales, if that would be possible, you must install this multi-level selling, or what we call multi-threaded engagement, right? So that would be the key. And coming back to our marketing function. So I will just open it again and zoom in. So last step here would be just thinking about the capacity, right? I shared with you that step where you do the cluster challenge decomposition. You come up with multiple ideas. You can have a big backlog of these different ideas, but if you don't have capacity, right, they are useless. So you need to prioritize, and then you start mapping out these different activities to the visual journey and assign different roles. This is the stage where we highly recommend to involve product team, client success team, sales team, SDRs, account executives to define who will be in charge of what. Because these are also in many teams, in many teams you have a lead handover process, right, or handoff. So to ensure that the marketing job doesn't stop only at this point, right, you altogether need to think about how and where our responsibilities would be to influence these different stages of the buying process. Think about as football team, or how our friends from North America call it soccer, right? So you have different roles in the team. You have goalkeeper, you have defenders, you have midfielders, you have forwards, right? Obviously, on the pitch, they have different roles and responsibilities. But ultimately, the end goal of that team is to win the game and to win the championship. The same as is in business, right? The ultimate goal is to drive pipeline and generate revenue. And the philosophy is the same. Everybody attacks, everybody defends, right? So the same is here. We always cultivate this all-bound mindset. Forget about inbound, outbound. It's all about all-bound marketing, right? How together we can be aligned. So to map out these roles, you need just to think about realistically about your capacity, involve senior leadership, present to them their findings, and all together finish this exercise defining the key roles. There was a question from Shazap. Would this apply to service-based firms as well?
Yeah, it's a good question, and in some ways, even more. Very frequently, service-based companies can address different kinds of challenges, different kinds of for different kinds of customers, like different kind of challenges, use cases for different types of customers in different industries, et cetera, et cetera. What this means is that if you want to market a service company and you want to find a kind of the most common denominator, common denominator between all these different challenges, you almost have no other choice than to position yourself based on your service. We are a software development company. We are a marketing agency. But if you position your company like that, you're just one of the many. Like, it's extremely difficult nowadays to stand out, to attract attention of somebody when you're positioning yourself in this way. The only way that you can actually, as a service company, build trust is by demonstrating your expertise and positioning yourself as a kind of a strategic trusted advisor, strategic partner, trusted advisor. But what does that mean? That means that you associate your brand with the expertise, by demonstrating the expertise. You associate your brand with the strategic challenges of your target customers by demonstrating your expertise. And you cannot do that for everything and anything, right? So you need to, that's why it's so important to go back to the drawing board, look at what target segments do you want to address, what are the use cases, what are their challenges, because then we can create some meaningful marketing strategy, including, the messaging and content and positioning for that specific type of customer, for their challenges, and start basically building that trust. Because especially with services are kind of trust-based goods. They're only, you can't like try a service. Usually you have to purchase a service, you have to already sign a contract, then the service will be delivered, then later you will be able to evaluate whether the service was successful or not. So in other words, the customers need to trust you. So trust is important, and the best way for you to create trust with companies that don't know you yet is by, like I said, demonstrating the expertise around the challenges that strategic challenges that they have. So it's like even more important, I would say, for service companies, these aspects that I just mentioned. So hopefully that answers your question, Shazab.
And we have a few more questions coming from our community that we can cover. And if you guys want to ask us any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and you can join us live. You only need to switch on your camera. So feel free to, but again, feel free to type your questions as well, and we'll cover them. That was a good question from Samantha Blanks. Top tips for achieving alignment with sales if it's based on global. And I hope the entire narrative that we shared today helps with this, right? Because literally you need to go through all of these steps together with sales, from defining our go-to-market challenges and our goals, then priority markets, verticals, ICP, etc., to buyer journey and activities, right? When you do it all together, and then at the end you map out the responsibilities, who influences what part of the buying process, this is how you achieve alignment. Easy to say, hard to do, and even more harder to maintain it. We know that a lot of teams, unfortunately, stay aligned on the paper in the PowerPoint, right, but not in the reality. But that's another story, right? So one of the questions I feel that you would be eager to answer comes from Aaron Bean. What is one thing that the market and clients think they are doing right, but in fact they are getting it wrong, and what should they be doing differently?
What is the one thing that the market or the client, let me just share this also here. Clients think they're doing right. Market clients, I guess this is referring to the B2B companies. So our clients potentially, yeah, doing right, but in fact they're doing wrong, and what they should be doing differently. I think several times during this conversation, we have spoken about awareness creation. And this is something that a lot of companies mess up. And there are several aspects to it. So first of all, they assume that you can create awareness by focusing on product promotion, essentially, or essentially trying to capture an existing demand. They want to focus on those companies who are in the market right now, so they promote their product by touting the benefits of the product, and hoping that people who are in the market right now, companies who are in market right now, will take the call to action, whatever the call to action, book a demo, a discovery call, trial, whatever. Now, as we have just said several times, and I'll say just in a different way, one of the things that we know is that these days 80% of enterprise buyers will shortlist, meaning once they start buying, and eventually they will end up with a short list of vendors that they are considering. So 84% of enterprise buyers will shortlist a vendor they actually were aware of, they knew, they discovered before starting their buyer journey. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that if you want to end up in that consideration set, if you want to become one of those companies they consider, you need to create the awareness before they start the buying process. And this is what a lot of companies don't get. Why? And what is the biggest mistake? Well, because again, if they are not buying, they're usually not really interested in your product. So, but what are they interested in? That's why we always, like we said this several times and always repeat, like you have to associate your brand with the top of mind strategic challenges that they have today. So again, you might be selling, again, some sort of a HR technology that helps with a specific job to be done, but this job might be like one of the 20 different things that they're doing as part of their responsibility, as part of an HR function, let's say maybe talent acquisition function. But they do have a set of challenges that are top of their mind, where you also help. You're kind of a piece of the puzzle there. So you need to be creating content and communicating about those challenges. And this is the only way that you will be able to create the awareness. I think this is one of the things. And the reason why I say that companies think that they are doing it right is because basically we know that, okay, we are doing awareness creation through those programs. We have even like SEO, we have all of this, we have traffic it's coming on a website, etc., etc. But if this communication is not aligned with those strategic challenges that are broader usually than your product, then that's where it's failing. And also, I very much related to that. One of the things that a lot of companies think they're doing right is content. It's very much related to that. But I think that we know a lot of examples of B2B content that is just plain irrelevant. That is just plain and not really influencing any serious senior buyer. It's enough to just go on any blog of any B2B company, 90% of B2B companies, and check the kind of content they have, asking yourself, is this content going to help create awareness around strategic challenges of their senior buyers? And usually the answer is no. And not only that the topics may not be relevant or maybe too narrow, etc., or maybe just self-promotional, but also like when you zoom in and check the quality of that content, again, thinking of senior buyers, that's very frequently quite superficial content. Maybe they hired an agency that hired junior writers, and these days, of course, using ChatGPT and other AI tools to create content, which usually is based on other content that is out there. So they do their quote unquote research, which is just basically trying to see what other people and bots are actually writing about out there. And so what you end up with, by definition, is just another copy paste, generic Me Too piece of content that does no influence on the buyers. So I think like this is one of the biggest mistakes, I would say, that we see in the market right now.
And I will drop my 5 cents because that was a fantastic answer. I will try just to summarize it with a few words. It's the biggest problem that I feel is quality bias and lack of feedback loops, which means quality bias could be, we believe we have fantastic messaging. And we are so biased with this. But have you ever demonstrated to your prospects and ask them, is it clear for you? Do you understand what our product does? Do you clearly see the value of our product? Does it motivate you to check it, right? And see that product in action. The next one, the content that Vlad shared. We believe we have fantastic, top-notch content. Even we create it with agency, we provide them all these insights. And then you open, for example, what's the best post that you have in your blog? And it's like 5 tips. These are 5 very generic tips. And the post ends up, if you like to basically implement what we have shared in this post, you must purchase our product because our product, blah, 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 blah. And you just read another paragraph of long, irrelevant sales pitch. So, and it's the same call to outreach. Once we were discussing this with Vlad, and apparently we saw a fantastic post from Jen Allen Knut, one of the speakers of our Fullfunnel Summit, and she said the same about outreach. Right? People say we have fantastic outreach messaging. We hired the best copywriter, so we know it's top notch. But if you are not getting replies, it means that it's not top notch, right? That's the first thing. And obviously, there are many other things that influence the reply rates. But quite often, it's just like, have you ever get any feedback? Have you ever shown this, outreach message to anybody, or advertisements, right? The ads that you are running, so you can get feedback on them. So I think these are the biggest mistakes, and they influence everything. Companies could be, we know also the example when companies do a lot of activities that should drive pipeline, that should influence buyer journey, webinars or podcast, for example. but then they run webinar and it just like there is no value. There is actually no tangible outcome of that webinar. So for example, with Vlad, we defined, and maybe some of you attended these webinars. So we defined the format when we know that people love it. And it's not our biased opinion. So after the webinar, we just literally open LinkedIn and see 20-30 posts. People are tagging us, sharing screenshots, sharing their takeaways, etc. And we know then that format works. Or I mean, also receiving the private feedback, right? So the same with the podcast. We are doing this podcast live. We're picking up the questions from you. We answer these questions. We have like for every episode, more or less, we have 100 signups. Not everybody listening to us live, but then people are watching the recordings and people are reaching out and providing us feedback. And we know that we don't pitch our product or services. We just try to deliver to answer in the best possible way the questions that are bothering our community, our target buyer personas. A lot of companies do the opposite. They come and they talk. I remember once one of our clients literally nailed it down. That was a great definition. We talk about what we want to talk, but not what actually our buyers need and want to listen to. And that's the huge difference. So in nutshell, this the quality bias, right, and lack of feedback loops. So I think these are the two things. To wrap it up, thank you so much, guys, first of all, for all the fantastic questions. Quick announcement, next week we are bringing another client to our Fullfunnel Live to share a new live ABM case study. So stay tuned. We'll send an announcement next Monday. And I feel you'll love it because it would be all about account-based marketing in a real estate sector. Probably not something that everybody talks every single day. Stay tuned. Have a great rest of the week and see you next week. Cheers.
Bye.